Hi, everyone. This is a Xica Nation special feature. I'm your host, Iris Rodriguez, broadcasting live from Guadalajara, Mexico. And today we have a very special guest. We have with us Josie Valadez Fraire, and she's tuning in from Colorado. Say hi, Josie.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm so honored to be here today. Thank you so much for watching.
We're so honored to have you in this space and to hear what you have to share. Josie just recently on July 1st was at a Trump protest there in Colorado and was targeted and victimized by the police for smudging. So we have a lot to talk about, and so we hope you join us for the rest of the conversation. So Josie, can you tell us a little bit more about what happened that day, what the event was about, what was going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So the event was at the Colorado Convention Center. They were hosting the Western Conservative Summit. So there was a lot of conservative folks there, folks like Donald Trump and Sarah Palin and other folks who are, part of the political sphere right now. The main attention grabber, of course, was the presence of Donald Trump. And he has visited our state before. He actually visited my university campus, the University of Colorado Boulder, when they did the Republican debate. So the presence of him being in Colorado sparked quite a lot of controversy. And a lot of different organizations from the area, specifically in Denver, were completely outraged and decided to hold an action to demonstrate that we are not in support of Donald Trump and his hateful rhetoric within our state. And so the protest happened because of that. So we were there to protest Donald Trump, his presence in our state, all of the rhetoric that he spews that's filled with hate, all of the very, very xenophobic, racist, anti-Indigenous, anti-disabled, very ableist, elitist things that he consistently talks about within his speeches and in his political spheres, of course. So that's kind of what the event looked like. Of course, since he was present in that space, there was also plenty of Trump supporters that were there, and most of them were pretty adamant about engaging with protesters, and so there was definitely tension within the space.
Based on the videos and pictures that came out that day, it almost looked like the police were there protecting him, and that it affected me and affected lots of folks from my community, because we're very used to like repression of our communities as Native peoples, as Chicano peoples, as Mexican Americans, and so there have been some events where there's been clashes and things like that, but in this case it didn't look that way. It didn't look like the folks that were asserting themselves from the racism and from the racist side of the event were agitating anybody. And I noticed that in looking through the videos, that the video of your arrest of the cops singling you out and taking away your sacred smudge, your sacred medicine, it was very violent to watch. And so can you tell us a little more about that? I also noticed that the video had over 1 million views already.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in what you said, you're absolutely correct. From the beginning, and we talk about this consistently when we talk about topics of the police state and how they protect and serve, right? And we really have to discuss who they're there to protect and serve, because from the beginning, it did not appear to be us. And so there was, around the convention center, there was plenty of barricades to ensure the safety of the folks at the convention, folks that were coming into that space, tons of police up high on buildings, like watching over quite literally. The police that were actually engaged with my particular incident were actually, I came to know, gang unit police officers. So the fact that they were even present in that space tells me quite a lot. And it's really disgusting to think about the fact that the Denver police felt they needed to implement a gang unit into that space, to install a gang unit into that space, based on the folks that were present. And it's really critical to note that we were peaceful protesters in that space. You know, I didn't see very much hostility coming from protesters. I noticed a lot of hostility from Trump supporters, and of course, when you're presented in those situations, some folks, of course, did then come and respond to them, and became to get riled up and aggressive and hostile in the way that they were speaking to people. But in terms of violence, there was none until an incident broke out directly prior to my incident, and so that's really important. And I think some people miss that when watching those videos. They miss the fact that, I mean, why were there so many police present in our space? Why were there? They were truly barricading off the street. They were separating protesters from the convention center itself, and really isolating us to a very small space, physical space. So in terms of protection, I don't believe that they were there to protect us as protesters or even Trump supporters necessarily. I think they were there to protect the folks that were at the convention. And so the folks that were engaging in this other space kind of became almost viewed as the threats towards the people that were at the convention, right? So we automatically got viewed as, hey, there's a potential here for violence and harm. Whereas, if they were truly doing what they say they do, their purpose there would have been to ensure that we were okay, to ensure that our rights weren't being violated, that we weren't being harmed. And it was quite the opposite. And especially prior to my incident, there was a lot of question. There was a lot of riling up of people. People were wondering, like, hey, what's happening? We just saw a swarm of police come in towards this group of people, so we were wondering what's going on. And when we realized there was a fight occurring, we were like, okay, well, that makes sense, I suppose. But there was also concern about whether or not they were going to use like tear gas on us or other methods of dispersing crowds, or have their own violent means of kind of silencing us as a crowd. So we weren't sure, and there was a lot of yelling at that time, folks yelling peace and love. We're here with peace and love. Some folks were yelling America, the KKK, this and that. So it was a very heated space, definitely.
Wow. And I just can't help but feel that you were so blessed, and that folks that were present recorded, that they busted out their phones, they were taking pictures. And so it's not like, that it's just your voice up against, this police state, but that the community saw it. Everybody witnesses. This is a collective experience, to some degree. So what can you say something about the importance of documenting these struggles?
Absolutely. I think, and still every single moment of this experience, I'm just so thankful that there's any kind of footage of it whatsoever, specifically video footage. It's really hard to refute video evidence. I mean, and we've seen it done multiple times in court, so it's not like that's a guarantee. But in terms of actually being able to physically see what was happening, there's less like he said, she said type situation, or I said versus they said, and it creates a tangible view of what actually happened for folks that weren't actually there. And so one of the things that I was so thankful for, even during the incident, I noticed it immediately, is that folks started to record. And so there was points, where I made sure to turn towards the cameras. I wanted folks to see me. And the way that it all happened, the police were very aware of the recording as well. So they ensured that they positioned me in ways that made it more difficult for folks to record, specifically when they were talking to me one-on-one. And so that makes the details of those specific incidents a little bit more fuzzy from a legal standpoint. And so it's difficult to fight against that. But I am so thankful, and I was so thankful to the folks that were there at that very moment to tell them thank you so much for recording, to my friends who were there supporting me for recording as well and taking pictures, and for folks who have reached out to me since that event and said, hey, I have video of this incident, can I send it to you? Or hey, like, this is a video that I took, or pictures, feel free to distribute them in any way that you feel fit. So things like that, I mean, are phenomenal, because I didn't have the opportunity, and in some of the videos you can see my phone was actually taken from me, so I couldn't record. which is a whole nother thing that we'll have to discuss later on within the court setting. But if folks hadn't recorded this, I think this incident would be like so many others that I'm positive happen and have happened, specifically against our communities and communities of color, where police do things that are completely unconstitutional, incredibly biased, racist, sexist, all kinds of different things that just, I mean, nobody hears about, right? And we know even that when stuff does get recorded, even when there are images of things, even when there are folks speaking out, oftentimes the police state has a way of making sure that things go away for them, that things don't get discussed, that folks don't rally, that folks don't gather and community doesn't build, because if that's the case, then they know that they have a bigger struggle on their hands. And so it's been phenomenal, the amount of attention that this has received, as well as how much support I've gotten, because I mean, even directly after the incident, I was like, oh my gosh, like, wow, you know, and I didn't get thrown in jail. And I think some folks dismiss the situation because of that. They think, well, like, okay, well, she didn't get put in prison, like, it's not that big of a deal. And honestly, I believe that the only reason that did not happen is because the police quickly assessed the situation and realized, hey, this person is not standing here alone. This person has a whole community behind her, folks at that very rally and beyond, that are not going to be okay with this. And from the beginning, the moment that that police officer grabbed me, folks started chanting and yelling and recording. And I think quickly and very intelligently, the police assessed, hey, this is not the person to target. And so for that, I am incredibly thankful for my community, for all of the folks that were there, people of color, white folks, alike, everybody that was there that was truly supporting me, because I'm positive that had there been very little response or a very tame response from the crowd, I could have easily ended up in that sheriff's vehicle on my way to the police station. Because, I mean, and that's what they were threatening to do the entire time. You know, I didn't know from the moment that they grabbed me what's happening to me right now, what is gonna happen to me. And we've seen so much too. I mean, I'm honestly just thankful to even be alive. There's been so much violence occurring in our communities that could have easily been me. Specifically, the way that they were so aggressively targeting me and treating me, it could have easily escalated to, you know, it was self-defense on the part of the police because of whatever, or fear of bombs, or all kinds of things. There's all kinds of different rhetorics floating around right now as to why the police did what they did. But I'm really, really thankful to even be here speaking about this, and even more thankful that folks across the nation, in the state of Colorado, across the world even, are seeing this footage. And I think it's coming as a wake-up call for a lot of folks, like, hey, we know stuff happens, but seeing this over something that, like you said, is so sacred, and the way that it was confiscated from me, that was the only point. And in some of the videos you can see, as soon as that officer ripped the sage from my hand, I just put my head up and I started praying. And that was the only point in the entire incident that I felt incredibly emotional. And I was, you know, tears were forming in my eyes, because the fact that they did something like that to something so sacred, something that's not just for show, it's not just there for, hey, I'm having fun. Like, this is something that to our communities and to me specifically is so deeply held in my heart and so sacred. It disgusted me to my core that happened. And I at that moment, I was just in shock and so upset with the situation. And I think folks really realize that. There's a lot of footage as well of community members, you know, pleading police, like, hey, the police that were in the barricade line, hey, just grab the sage, give it to us. Like, please don't crush it, give it to us. You know, that's sacred. And the way that they continued to proceed with that incident was just incredibly disrespectful. And that's one of the highlights of that moment, of that entire incident, is the way that they treated something so sacred.
Yeah, it was shocking and very difficult to watch. As Chicana Indígena myself, I mean, it brought me to tears, because I know what that sage means, and it means that to me. This is not, it's not just you in your community in Colorado. I mean, this is from the tip of the continent to the other tip of the continent, you know, and I was besides myself just watching it from afar, wondering, oh my God, like this is a total violation of your spirituality, of our spirituality. And I just couldn't help but to think about all the other things that come up for me, being under occupation on our lands, colonial terrorism, indigenous spirituality, police brutality, or as you were mentioning earlier, cultural competence of these people that live on native territory, but act as if, our ways of working with spirit and our own spirituality is not just demonic, but criminal.
Yes.
And so to me, this was like an example of ongoing colonialism in the United States in the present day, even though we speak English, even though we are educated, even though like we've been able to resist to the point to where we're speaking the oppressor's language and we're occupying spaces and still dealing with it. And I think the extra layer of you being a woman is just so profound. So can you speak to the feelings that come up for you with that, from like an intellectual perspective, a Chicana intellectual perspective?
Absolutely. And from the very beginning, like I said, I knew very clearly what kind of space I was going to be entering, which is why I made a very active decision, a very conscious decision to bring my sage with me to smudge at that particular event. It was a very, very, very intentional move on my part. And what you're talking about in terms of occupation of our land and this really colonial terrorism that continues to exist, and the fact that colonialism is so deeply embedded into our society now that folks don't even recognize it, is astounding. I mean, and even throughout the entire protest, there's plenty of folks that were saying incredibly hateful things to me, really disgusting things to me. There was a point where a man, and there's actually a picture of him, a man got very aggressive towards me because I was smudging in his presence, and he kept saying, "Get that whatever out of my face." Another Trump supporter, a woman, she kept telling me how disgusting it was and how disgusting I was, and that it smelled like I did, and just really horrible things that were being said to me throughout the entire protest. So, it wasn't like the folks that were Trump supporters were also just, ambivalent to whatever was happening. There was active hatred going on in that space. And so in discussing and in talking with Trump supporters there at the protest, the topic of occupation came up consistently. Even Donald Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again," right? There's this underlying deep historical misunderstanding about our story, about the fact that this land is occupied land, that we are pre-American. And so the fact that, our origins, our communities didn't come from a post-colonial point of view. We were here, we've been here, we still exist. And a lot of folks think that, hey, like America is this land where, all kinds of people exist and reparations have been made and all of that was in the past. And really colonization is still active and well today. And these are examples, these are examples of oppressors trying to continuously colonize our bodies, our minds, our spirituality. And it's not working. Because if it was, there would be no response to this. Folks would say she's some crazy lady, some witch, some whatever it is that they want to say. And that's just simply not the case. The fact that folks are outraged is an active demonstration of the fact that we are still resisting that colonial oppression consistently. And I would say that being in this space, in this occupied America, as we say it, is an active form of resistance, but it's also incredibly difficult. Because we're trying to sit here and reclaim, especially, and I'm speaking from my own point of view as a Chicana, a Mexicana, I am somebody who is trying to find and reclaim my indigeneity that has been stripped from my communities for so long. The fact that we even speak languages like English and Spanish as well. Spanish is a colonial language. These Latin roots, the fact that we have been named Hispanics and Latinos and all of these different things actively erases our indigeneity. And so trying to live in a way and exist in a way that reclaims that indigeneity is so difficult, because who do we turn to? You know, we can't just go to the library and pick up a bunch of books and read about history in school and all of these things. And you know, you and I, potentially from being formally educated within university settings, might have had those experiences where, hey, we were privileged enough to have educators who said, hey, let's learn about the real our story of this nation prior to the formation of this nation. You know, the way that land was stolen from Mexico, the way that indigenous peoples for generations have been stepped on, and all of this was built on the backs of indigenous peoples, and the enslavement of Black folks, African folks, you know, and so that history completely erased. And so this is, I believe, to be really a form of colonial terrorism. White folks love to throw out the term terrorism at people of color. They love to install extremism into our communities and root extremism in our communities, but really, and since the beginning, it has stemmed from white communities, Anglo folks, European folks, folks who have actively and violently, you know, occupied our spaces, our people who have raped and murdered and committed genocide on entire nations, entire continents. And so, and that's still happening today. You know, we are in no way, shape, or form in any kind of decolonial space. And so folks who are blessed enough to be in spaces that are more decolonial should really, really sit there and be thankful for that space, because being in a space that, the space that I exist in, reclaiming that indigeneity is, I mean, incredibly difficult, you know. And even folks within my own community are like, hey, you know, that's not something to be proud of necessarily. You don't want to be indigenous, you know, like you don't want to look India, you don't want to look this, you know, all of these things. And so it's an uphill battle consistently, and it's an uphill battle with wind blowing at you and folks pulling you. I mean, it's consistent, and it's draining and exhausting. And in terms of like theoretical work, you know, this isn't a topic that's new. There's been so many folks, and amazing mujeres especially, that consistently talk about the colonization of our bodies as women as well, and just the extreme violence that was used, you know, in my incident. That, like I said, there was one point where there was 4 officers on me, grabbing me, pulling me, twisting my arm, doing all kinds of things. And you know, I'm pretty small. I mean, pretty non-threatening just by appearance. I'm 4'11". I mean, very, very unlikely to be able to hurt one of the officers that was holding me and have any intent to do so in the first place. But the fact that amount of violence was used tells you something as well, you know. And I think I also have to really recognize the fact that I think based on my appearance alone, this has garnered a lot of support, and folks have really rallied behind me, because I think that sometimes, you know, we don't want to recognize it. We don't want to bring this up, but the way that we look as people has a lot to do with whether or not people care about us. You know, we see it in incidents like when there's an incident of police brutality or bullying in schools, or God forbid, you know, somebody commits suicide and is successful in that suicide. The discussion afterwards then becomes like, oh my gosh, she was so beautiful, he was so beautiful, they were so talented, they were this and that. And the fact that folks have positioned me as somehow superior than others based on the fact that I have a college education, the fact that I can speak English, the fact that I'm documented, the fact that I have all of these different privileges is really disgusting as well. And I want folks that are actively supporting me in this cause to be really aware of the ways that they're supporting it, and the things that they might be perpetuating with that same support, you know, by saying, you know, like somehow rooting this incident as more, or deeming this incident as more valuable or more worthy of attention or more worthy of justice because of who I am as an individual and the different privileges that I hold, or how valuable I am deemed to be in this society. And so that's something that I've noticed as well with the support. And again, I'm incredibly thankful of the support, incredibly thankful of it. But I'm also one to be really conscious and want people to check me when I'm doing something that is problematic, even if it's for a good cause, right? Because the impact is more important than the intent. So even if you mean well and you're saying things or doing things that are either sexist or that are elitist or that are xenophobic or all kinds of things while trying to support me, that's not the kind of support that I want, right? So I don't want folks saying, oh my gosh, like she's a student, or she was a student at the University of Colorado Boulder, how dare y'all do this to her, or she's a woman, or all of these different things. Like that shouldn't, those identities shouldn't be the sole reason for the support that I'm getting, because this would be just as important, just as infuriating, just as disgusting if it had happened to my mother, who has never had a formal education, to my cousins who don't speak English, to the folks in my community who are undocumented, or women that look a particular way that isn't deemed as socially acceptable, or whatever it may be. So that's been something that has been heavy on my mind as well. And men as well, men really checking themselves in the way that they approach me during this incident. So those different things are really, really important to know as well. But I mean, this incident is deep. There's a lot here. There's a lot to discuss. There's a lot to unpack. And the impact that this is having is tremendous, not only on my own personal life, my family, but entire communities, you know, and across, like we mentioned, across the nation, across the world. So deeply impactful stuff. Colonial violence is very much alive, and it's being acted upon too. These aren't just ideals. These aren't just thoughts that folks have. They're being acted upon right now.
That's right. And you're addressing so many points that I hadn't even thought about, but it's so true. It's so true. And you know, I also think too about the police response to this, because Colorado's not exactly like 100% white, you know. So in terms of cultural competence, in terms of cultural competence, it seems like they had none. If anything, there was this very strong feeling of anger directed at you and for what you represented to them, which we don't even know what that is. We just know that it's negative. Mm-hmm. And I was just beside myself, because I'm watching on the screen these police officers that are supposed to uphold the rights of us too. You know, we're included in that too. And they're just coming at you like you're some sort of enemy. Mm-hmm. And so could you tell us a little more about the feeling that came up, maybe for you or just in the environment with that kind of attack and like this very visible portrayal of the police just being culturally just violent?
Absolutely. You know, and even based on the action of smudging, there was no consciousness whatsoever around what it was, how it even works. I mean, you know, the fact that folks are sitting here thinking that, hey, like, why didn't you just put out the fire? Like, it was simple. Why were you resisting? These kinds of things. I mean, actively demonstrates that there's no consciousness whatsoever around how smudging works. And you know, I try to tell the police, and you can see this in the videos and hear it pretty clearly, there is no fire. There is no fire. And so in terms of how much of a hazard was this to people, very little. I mean, it's less hazardous than somebody lighting a cigarette, you know, yet there is folks all around me smoking the entire time and nothing was said to them, right? So definitely it felt like a direct attack on me, the practice that I was presenting in that space, my indigeneity as a whole, but also I think maybe they viewed me as like an easy target potentially. Maybe they didn't assess me to be like anything that would be that would cause any kind of backlash towards them, you know, and that's where they were critically mistaken, because and the community has shown it, right? I am not alone in this. I have never been alone, and I won't be alone in this, regardless of how this goes, regardless of what happens from here on out. I have no idea, no clue. I know that I'm not alone, and I know that folks are incredibly upset about this, and incredibly fired up about this too, because this incident hasn't only led to frustration and anger and, you know, all of these different negative emotions. For me, at least, I've also felt incredibly empowered. This has reignited my sage. This has reignited me to continue doing the work that I do, to continue fighting for our people. And the fact that we are even viewed as threatening in ways that require criminalization and violence and, you know, attempts to silence entire communities tells us that we have a lot of work to do, and a lot of work to do within all kinds of different spaces. And a lot of different people need to get involved with this, right? Because we need youth speaking up about this. We need our elders in our community speaking up about this. We need folks that are in high positions of power to speak about this. And we need the folks in our communities, in our villages, in our barrios to be talking about, why is this wrong? Why is this upsetting? You know, this isn't only a space for elitist, educated theorists to come through and say, oh, colonial terrorism is this and this and that. No, this is the space where everybody's voice matters and needs to be heard, because the methods of the oppressor are to silence us, and they win when they silence us. When we no longer feel like we have any power, when we feel like what we say doesn't matter, when we feel like our stories, even when shared, are useless, that's when they win. And so I refuse to sit here and let them win, and they're not winning. And I think the response of the police has been interesting, because folks have been reaching out to them. You know, folks have been calling, or folks have been tweeting, and their responses are very, very minimal. I mean, they'll say, like, we can't discuss these details. She was detained for disobeying lawful orders. That was my sentence. That's what I got, disobeying lawful orders. So, you know, that's their response. And there's just there's a lot going on in terms of that. And I think more and more people are realizing, hey, something is up here and something has to be done. And something as simple as, you know, sharing the footage, sharing it with a friend, sharing it on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or wherever it might be, or writing a message of support to me or to anybody that's helping to organize, anybody that's helping to organize in the community. Like, those are actions, you know, and we can all be agents of change, because we all hold different types of power, and we are all inserted into different spaces where we can bring these topics up. So very much, very, very painful for me to experience. It was all very painful to go through, physically as well as spiritually, emotionally. There was a lot going on in my mind during the time. There was points where I was very verbal with the police, and other points where I just stood there and reflected and prayed and you know, and asked Creator, like, please guide me in this, please protect me, protect my people, because there was no idea in my mind. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't know what was going to be happening. I didn't know what the response would be after, even when they released me. I just had no idea. And so the response has been phenomenal. And it's really powerful to watch and observe how much power we really do have. And we just need to harness that power. If we harness that power, I mean, and this is my argument with all kinds of things, when folks come together, when true unity happens, when we truly practice the principle of Enlakesh, you know, you are me, I am you, like, when we are truly united, the oppressors cannot oppress us, because we refuse to be oppressed. And so that's something that I want to happen. I want to continue to see that. And I want us to continue to fight this, because another thing that I would not like to happen, and I think some folks are, you know, again, saying without truly thinking about maybe what does that mean, and of course with good intent, is having, like, the charges dropped, for example. And this is where I go back to, this isn't just about me, like, okay, I have some charges now, if y'all can see my little ticket back there, you know, this isn't just about me having a ticket or being summoned for court or cited or whatever it is. You know, having the charges dropped and then folks being complacent with that means that this incident, like all the rest that have happened, gets swept under the rug, and the conversation silences, and that sage that was ignited burns out, and that's it. And then what happens from there? You know, I just become another name that had 15 minutes of fame for whatever reason, or this topic becomes another one that gets pushed to the bottom of the priority list of this nation, and that's what I don't want to happen. And And I, along with a lot of amazing community members and support systems that I have here in Colorado, are working very hard to not have that happen, because that is true defeat when we're complacent with what they're giving us, when it seems like they're almost doing us a favor by oppressing us. And so that's something that I've seen, and that's something that they made me feel during that entire incident. You know, like I should be thankful. Oh, thank you so much, officers, for not throwing me in jail. Like I should thank them, give them a cookie for being who they are. Definitely not. And that's something that I want folks to see and feel and embody. And I want the resistance to be very visual, and to be verbal, and to be something that people can't ignore. Because when you can't ignore the resistance, you know, change has to happen. Change has to happen.
Yes, I just have to say thank you. Thank you. I found out about this through my social media networks in the United States and Mexico. I mean, this sparked outrage across the border. People here that had no idea that we as Chicanas, or like you say, Mexicanas, have encountered these issues in the United States were all of a sudden like jolted, because this American dream is not anything more than a nightmare. Mm-hmm. And so I just have to say thank you, because even though the situation was painful for you to experience, you're opening hearts, and the healing it's creating a way for us to heal as a people, not just at the individual level, but at the communal level, and beyond the political borders that have been imposed upon us. So what can we do to support you from this point forward? I read that you have court coming up on August 1st. Could you tell us a little more about how we can directly support you?
Yeah, so well, thank you so much for creating this space, for doing what you do, because, you know, if you hadn't reached out to me, I wouldn't be sitting here sharing my thoughts or my feelings or what's been going on. So thank you so much for creating this space, for allowing folks to enter into this space and really engage with this that's happening. And it's, you know, it's so touching, and I keep posting everywhere, like, thank you so much for supporting me. I really appreciate it. And it's, you know, these aren't just automatic responses. Every single time I see a post, every single time I have somebody message me and say, we are with you and what you're doing is important, that does something here, you know? And it shows me, again, I'm not alone in this. And this resistance, this is what they fear. They fear resistance because they want us to be docile. They want us to be complacent. They want us to sit here and thank them for allowing us to be here, for allowing us to be alive, as if it is their right to give us that permission. And so it's really exhausting, you know, and I'm so thankful that folks in Mexico are hearing about this. And to the folks specifically in Mexico, I would say, be really conscious of the ways that we think about indigeneity, and the ways that we sometimes stigmatize indigeneity, and reject it, try to remove ourselves from it, instead of realizing that by claiming our indigeneity, we are actively fueling our ancestors' love that they had for us, and resisting the fact that folks literally tried to kill the indigeneity out of us, tried to rape the indigeneity out of us, tried to enslave us so much that we don't even think about wanting to be a part of that community any longer. So really, really important for folks in Mexico to think about that, as well as folks here in the U.S. You know, there's such a huge gap between us and in our indigeneity, that really learning to reclaim that is something so amazingly radical, revolutionary, phenomenal, and incredibly empowering. So in terms of what folks can do, again, like I said, getting that support literally touches my soul, and I'm so thankful for it. So continue sharing it. The more that folks see these images and see these videos and engage with this media, the more they discuss it with others. These conversations need to be brought up. For folks that are able and willing, and are in the area of Denver, Colorado, Boulder, Longmont, Aurora, Centennial, Littleton, Colorado Springs, anywhere in Colorado that are able to physically come to my court hearing, that would be phenomenal. I mean, ideally, We would have a full courtroom and folks outside of the courthouse as well, engaging in this event. That way folks can see, hey, again, she's not alone. This isn't just one person they pulled over and gave a ticket to. This isn't some person that was in the wrong place at the wrong time. This is deeper, and this is harmful, and this is hateful at its very core. And so folks that can be there, I ask, please be there. I would be eternally grateful. Our communities need this. I need this. And I think the nation and the world need this. And so if you can be there, that's phenomenal. And if you can't, that's okay as well. And that doesn't mean you can't do a single thing about it. That means even if you're not physically able to share and post online or talk to people about it because of whatever circumstances you have, you know, at the very least, you know, keep folks like myself in your prayers, and light some sage for me. Everybody light some sage. I would love that entirely. And I've been talking to my parents about the very same things, how they can do things and talk to their friends, you know, and especially older folks sometimes are a little bit more nervous to get engaged with things like this, you know, because I think our youth are incredibly empowered. I think our youth know that they harness so much power, and I love working with youth. It is my ultimate passion. And so seeing that's amazing. But seeing folks that are older as well, parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles, and folks who have children of their own, and all kinds of different things, engaging with this creates change in all kinds of different spheres. So that's really important. And yeah, just continue talking about this and continue to unpack, do education of your own. If you have no idea what we're talking about, if you have no idea why is it so wrong that the stage was literally, my fingers were literally pulled off of the stage and it was ripped out of my hand. Why is that wrong? Why is that so incredibly disrespectful to such a sacred practice? I mean, if you have no consciousness around that, that's okay, but go on and do some education of your own. What does it mean? What do people do this for? Why is it important? You know, and not everybody has the same spirituality. I don't identify as religious, so it's hard for me to say like this is about religion. But spirituality is something deeper than that. And so if you don't identify with that, if you have no concept of that at the very root, recognizing that the mistreatment of any people, the injustice towards any people is injustice towards all of us, because it will affect us. You know, we are all deeply interconnected, whether we benefit from privileges or not in a certain society, in a certain time and place. We are all deeply interconnected. So what happens to you happens to me. It might not affect me in the same exact way, but it affects me somehow. Everything does to every single person. It affects our land and the animals that we exist with and the air we breathe, everything. So it's really important to know that this isn't just about, hey, one mujer in Colorado that, you know, got ticketed. It's much deeper than that. So that's all I can ask for. And I'm incredibly humbled to be in this space and incredibly humbled to be in this position where this light can be brought to this topic and to these different topics, because it's so necessary and the healing needs to happen. I mean, these are colonial diseases we're fighting, so healing needs to happen.
That's absolutely right. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your palabra with us. Tlazo Kamati Yalsiwat, you're nothing less than a warrior woman, and I thank you. And I will light sage for you, and my community here will light sage for you, and my community back home in Texas will light sage for you. So you're not alone. Mm-hmm. The abuelitos, the ancestors walk with you, and I have full faith and hope and belief that you're going to come through this shining. But for some reason, you were chosen. And so I want to thank you for taking a moment out of your life to share with us here on Xica Nation, and also let you know that anytime you want to come back and anytime you want to talk about anything, you just let me know. And I also want to invite you over to Chicana Chronicles to discuss your feelings, your experience there in that space as well. And so thank you again. And for everyone out there who tuned in, this was a powerful conversation. Thanks for joining us, and keep in touch. I'll be posting links with this article, and the bottom of the article for information on her August 1st date and how you can connect with her and how you can support her, as well as engage more in your communities about this topic. Because as she says, it's so important that we use this moment to connect with each other, to reconnect with who we are, to reconnect with why we're here, and with our own power, not only as individuals, but as people. So thank you, everybody. This has been a Xica Nation exclusive interview. Have a good day.
Let's look at Matthew. Thank you so much.
Bye.